It's much better now. Hi, all. It's Vanessa Love. All right. So I've been rethinking this idea about the coloring pages and what that means for art therapy and the art therapy. So there was a time where I said that art therapy could include coloring pages, and I got a lot of backlash about that because people feel like other art therapists, I shouldn't even say people, other art therapists feel that it is not a part of the art therapy field. And I think one of the main reasons for that is because people don't feel like that's really expression. They feel like it's kind of like an easy way, and it's kind of that it's kind of an easy thing to do, and it's not really expressing your uh, like your deep soul, you know. And the American Art Therapy Association came out. Sorry, I'm trying to reduce the glare on my glasses. The American Art Therapy Association came out and said that they do feel that it's a therapeutic activity, but it is not considered art therapy. And, I think when you try to explain that to a layperson, that's a very tough sell. Like, okay, it's art and it's therapeutic, but it's not art therapy. Like that's really, really splitting a hair. Okay, I'm just going to take the glasses off. Like this is, the glare is annoying me. So like, why did I come out and say that, coloring pages were art therapy? Well, because I think it's a soft sell. It's an easier sell because people already connect to coloring pages. They already, use that in a way that is therapeutic and relaxing for them. And I allow my clients to color while they're talking because sometimes clients don't want to look you in the eye while they're talking about really, really upsetting things. Sometimes clients kind of need that distraction from themselves. And I've known a couple of clients who are just like, the ADHD symptoms are bad that day, and they just want to color, And so that's why I did come out and say that. I also think that there's a couple of other things, going on where it's just like, I know I've had the debate early on where it was like, why are you using, coloring pages in your, therapeutic recreation classes? Well, because I think that they're helpful. And I remember one of my colleagues going, I don't know. I don't agree with that. And then she started talking to one of the patients at the hospital, and the patient is going, I'm having some thoughts about a car accident while she's coloring a coloring page that's a car, so clearly there's something there. I think the other thing that people forget, like I'm an artist, I do artwork. If you tell me to do artwork, I will do artwork. You're like, hey, do this. Okay, yeah, I'll do that thing. Cool, let's do it. There are not that many people out there, in my experience, who come to therapy and they're like gung ho. Like most people come to therapy and they need some time to get used to the process. They need to gain that rapport with the therapist and all this other stuff, And so what happens is they don't want to do like art, and they're really, really reluctant because I think a lot of people still don't understand what art therapy is. Some of them are kind of actively avoiding what art therapy might be. And so they just end up like, I don't want to do artwork in front of you, you know? And I've had enough experience with people who are trying so hard to, seem significant and say something important that, it's kind of like, could you get off me for a second and just like talk to me like a person, you know? So, what do you call it? So I think sometimes art therapy to some people it's a hard sell, and there's some people who are never going to want to do art therapy. Like they're really just like, why, you know? And they just don't have that creative expression inside of them. They really don't. So, for some people who might actually get involved with art therapy later on, you have to ease them into it. Some people have not touched art supplies since they were 10 or 11 because it's age 12 when you kind of either identify as an artist or you don't. And so you either continue doing artwork or you don't. So I think that you have to meet people at their level. And if doing like a coloring page and like a positive message coloring page from a therapy session is can be a positive experience for that person who's going to want to do art therapy in the future and who's honestly curious about it but doesn't know how to start, and wouldn't go for, okay, now we're going to do oil painting, or we're going to do, these very elaborate and fancy and, uh, you know, um, art directives. So I think that, having them available is like less threatening in a, what is that called, in a therapy session. The other thing to consider is that like some people who are in this field think that you have to create something in order for it to be considered, um like for it to be considered art therapy. And I can almost guarantee you that the people who say that have never made a paintbrush, have never grown cotton and made, their own canvas. Like they are not the people who are absolutely creating every aspect of their artwork. What's happening is that they're buying, they're buying canvas. Maybe they buy the canvas cloth and they stretch their own canvases, but they're still not making everything on their own. The art community has already been through this. They went through this 100 years ago. They've already had this debate. This is not something that people like. This is not something to revisit for art therapy, really. Like in about 1917, it might have been 1913, Marcel Duchamp was like, explain to me why this is an art. He got a pre-made, prefabricated, so prefab, uh, urinal, put his name on it, and was like, yeah, so I'm, putting this in an art gallery because he was pissed off at the art world. I mean, it's a longer story than that, but I mean, that's pretty much it. And, he had to kind of, he was asking the question, why isn't this art? So like for coloring pages, why isn't that an expression? You know, one of my colleagues, she works with people who are disabled. And I mean, Jesus, like that's a whole thing that like I give her credit for her job because I couldn't work with that population. I work with the population that I work with because I work well with them. But she works with people who are disabled. Sometimes she does crafts. Sometimes she does very, basic things, but, she's doing them because it helps them like kind of come together. It helps them socialize. It helps them start to like do like fine motor work, dexterity things. And like it helps them. And like I think that there are some art therapists who would consider what she's doing to be not art therapy because they don't think that that's art therapy. And this is going back to what I've said previously, where it's like I just don't feel like the art therapy education that I got was realistic in what I was going to be doing for art therapy. They have all of these case studies and, oh, you go in and you do this and you do, do that. And, maybe you take a week long retreat and you reconnect with your spirituality. Okay. I've never done any of those things, like I know one of the case studies that I used for my thesis was an art therapist who she'd used clay with a teenager who had self-harmed. Like, my thesis was about the artwork of people who self-harm. And, she talked about all the benefits of doing these things. And, like, I wish that that's something that I could connect with, and it's not, it really isn't something that, like, it's not something that I connect with, and there's a lot of things like that where it's just like, you learn these things, and you really, just a second. Okay. Um, like, you learn these things and you think, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm just gonna have these powerful moments all the time, and I'm gonna be like working on myself too. And you get home at the end of the day and you just kind of like sit down, watch TV, relax, maybe listen to a meditation video and go to bed. Like, sometimes you just eat and sleep, when you get home. And I just, it's one of those things where I'm like, I wish I was doing all the things that I was taught how to do in class, you know, but no, I'm not. Like, I'm not creating programming. I'm not, like, making sure that everything that I'm doing has, explained therapeutic value and all of that stuff. I take notes, I do billing, and sometimes there's an art therapy session. This is why I'm like, I'm an art therapist. I was trained as an art therapist. I love when I do art therapy sessions, but it's not entirely everything that I'm doing. I'm doing a lot more, what is that called? Talk therapy and counseling than I am, mostly anything else. And, I just think that it's a lot of different factors. I am in an area that is more open to it. I am the only art therapist in this area who's professional, I should say. I think there's one other art therapist in this area, and there had been one at the hospital, and she left, and there's now no art therapist there, to my knowledge. And then there's like one other place that I reached out to as soon as I moved here, and they haven't gotten back to me since I contacted them last year. That is not a good business practice, just by the way. I don't know if you'd ever do that, but don't do that. It doesn't give me any like confidence that you could actually return phone calls if someone really needed the help and I felt like you could help them. So yeah, I mean, that kind of like shoots yourself in the foot. All right, so that's all that I'm going to say about that for now. I am planning on doing another one of these pretty quickly because I want to touch on another subject. All right, I hope everyone has a great day, and I will talk with you soon.